Ever heard of a man with no hand and a man with no legs rob a bank? Well, here is the story of the most unlucky brothers and how they carried out the world's most biggest race heist. We can see Jimmy Logan and his daughter Sadie as he is trying to work on his automobile. Jimmy tries to persuade his daughter to sing his favorite West Virginia song for her pageant, but Sadie doesn't think it will suit the contest. After a brief bonding with his daughter, he goes over to the construction site where he works. Jimmy gets called over to the manager's office. The manager had to let him go because there were complaints that his leg wouldn't let him do the job properly. He is being seen as a liability issue, therefore they needed to sack him. A frustrated Jimmy then goes over to his sister's saloon, where he is expected to take his daughter to her dance rehearsals. Melly lets him know that the dance was yesterday, and she took care of business. Jimmy's disappointed that Melly didn't even try to call him, but she indeed called, just that his phone has been switched off. Jimmy knows he's in trouble because his ex-wife isn't going to stop yapping about it. So he heads over to her place. He tries to explain that he thought the dance was scheduled for today, but Bobby Joe isn't hearing any of that. She is disappointed that Melly had to do the driving, and she is always driving like a Formula One racer. Just as they are talking, Sadie rushes to meet her father, followed by Moody and his two sons. Jimmy learns that she has been restricted from certain things like ice cream, and is even joining her stepdad Moody to go see a Fast and Furious movie. Jimmy feels the movie is too intense for the kids and declines to come with them. Just as they leave, Bobby tells Jimmy that they are trying to sell their house because Moody is expanding. His family had opened a new dealership in Lynchburg, across the state. Jimmy is mad because he has to come across town to see his daughter. He threatens to involve a lawyer, but Bobby knows he's too broke for that. Jimmy goes over to a bar where his brother Clyde serves as a bartender. Clyde, who is an ex-soldier, lost his lower arm in the Iraq War. Just then, Max, the supposed owner of NASCAR, walks in with his friends. They make fun of Clyde's one arm. Max tries to take a photo with Clyde, saying he will make him popular. But Jimmy isn't going to watch his brother get picked on. He tells the men to show respect, as he lost his arm in the line of service. Max doesn't listen, and this results in a huge fight. They overpower Jimmy as they push him onto the ground. Landing punches. Clyde goes over to set Max's car on fire. Seeing this, they rush to control the fire, but it's too late. Jimmy leaves the scene saying a code word cauliflower to Clyde. At his apartment, Clyde wakes up to see Jimmy preparing his favorite bacon and also a poster with the top 10 rules of robbing a bank. Clyde soon realizes what Jimmy's up to, and then reminds him that his life of crime is over. Jimmy tells his brother that they are going to rob the Charlotte Motor Speedway. The sports venue was one of the busiest and most popular in the country, but recently Jimmy discovered that they had an issue with their pipe burst, which resulted in a sinkhole. He lays out his perfect plan to Clyde, exploiting his knowledge of how the underground pneumatic tube transport works, including the system of moving a whole lot of money through it, then directly to the bank vault. He suggests that they launch the heist during the Grocery Castle Auto Show, since there will be a low turnout of people and minimal security. They had a vault to crack open, so they employed the help of an incarcerated Joe Bang, a professional vault cracker. At first, Joe Bang doesn't want to be involved because he believes his bank blowing days are over. But after they told him about how his brother's wife had dug up his stash of money and fled town, Joe Bang began to rethink his decision. He tells them he would love to help, but he is currently incarcerated. The Logan brothers tells him that they have a plan to break him out. Seeing how determined they are, Joe decides to join them only on the condition that they break him out and bring him back in without anyone noticing. And they have to involve his two dim-witted brothers so they would protect his interest. At a funfair event, we can see Melly lecturing Moody about cars and how he always depended on auto and not manual cars. The Logan brothers have invited their little sisters to the best as she is a goddess behind the wheel. They get to see Joe's brothers at a chicken competition. Jimmy's disappointed and promises to only make them know what he wants them to know. After the competition, Jimmy goes to meet them. He tells them about the heist, but they refuse to help, saying they move with the Lord now, and they needed a moral reason to rob. Seeing they wouldn't agree unless there was a moral cause for doing it, Clyde tells the Bang brothers that the grocery store tried to get handsy with his sister, and they are trying to pay back. That seemed like a good motivation for the boys to rob, so they agreed. In line with the prison breakout, Clyde intentionally rams through a car shop. Because of this, the judge has to send him to prison for a minor charge. Melly takes out the measurement of the prison truck as they plan to use it for their escape plan. Meanwhile, Jimmy takes his daughter Sadie to Melly's saloon, where she is to prepare for her pageant. Just as he waits outside, he sees a woman who introduces herself as a healthcare professional, offering to give him a tetanus shot. Since it was free, Jimmy didn't decline the offer. He finds out that her name is Sylvia, and the woman was his classmate back then in Valley View. She had eyes on him. But Jimmy was a popular football player and didn't look at Sylvia twice. Well, now Sylvia is hot, and Jimmy has suddenly developed a crush on her. The crew begin to plan their equipment for the heist. Jimmy goes back to his former workplace to get maps of the sinkhole. He learns that construction at the speedway is being completed ahead of schedule. Jimmy has no other choice but to move the heist a week earlier. Unfortunately, it's going to be the Coca-Cola race, which is the busiest of all races in the whole year. This doesn't stop Jimmy, though, as the plan still remains the same. With the unknowing help of Thelma, a woman working at the vault, Jimmy and Melly are able to deliver a cockroach-infested cake into the vault. Sam and Fish, the Bang brothers, put in painted cockroaches that will infest the speedway tube system, determining which particular tube goes to the vault. Joe, on the other hand, arranges with a fellow inmate, Naaman, to help him cause a lockdown that will enable him and Clyde to escape. On the day of the race, each of the crew members were assigned special duties. At the correctional center during the lunch break, Joe Bang throws up to cause a distraction that gets him taken to the infirmary. Meanwhile, Melly had gone to steal Moody's Ford GT 350. She has plans of using it as their getaway car. At the infirmary, Joe Bang asks that he use the toilet, but then the nurse won't allow him because she thinks that he is too nauseous to stand up. Clyde, who planted himself in the scene, offers to help Joe Bang go to the toilet. Together, they plan their escape as they use the prison truck to escape the facility. Meanwhile, a commotion happens in the prison cell, where the inmates begin to fight the guards. The warden has no choice but to put the whole prison and facilities on lockdown. On the other hand, Sam and Fish blows up the Speedway cell tower to disable their credit machines, forcing different vendors to only accept cash. The crew arrives at the race event, ready for their heist. In the prison cell, the inmates capture the prison guard, demanding a list of impossible items. On the other hand, Joe and Clyde enter the tube room with Jimmy. Joe makes an explosive made from gummy bears and a salt substitute. Although it doesn't work out the first time, he twitches it a little, and then the explosive blows open the gate from the tube to the vault. Smoke from the blast goes through the tube, attracting the attention of the vendors. So 2 security personnel are sent to go check what could be causing the smoke. Meanwhile, the crew connects the tube to a vacuum pump and then sucks up all the cash into garbage bags. During the course of their excitement, Jimmy accidentally sucks up Clyde's prosthetic arm. They get into an argument with the Bang brothers, but Jimmy's able to resolve it, promising to get back Clyde's arm. Just as they are about to transfer the bag of cash into Jimmy's truck, the security guard sees them. Although Sam and Fish are able to come up with a lie, the security guards know something is fishy and decides to investigate the facility further. They find Earl, one of Clyde's bar patrons, smoking in a restricted room. Just as they successfully move the cash into Jimmy's truck, they plan their escape. But then Joe and Clyde bump into Max and his driver, who had just lost the race. Max recognizes him to be the bartender that set his car on fire. After the heist, the inmates set on the fire alarm, which makes the warden call out the firefighters. Joe and Clyde disguise as firefighters to make their way back into the prison. Jimmy makes it in time for his daughter's pageant, as she decides to sing his favorite West Virginia song instead of her originally planned Umbrella by Rihanna. After the show, Sadie is made the winner of the pageant, as Melly returns Moody's car in a terrible condition. The next day on the news, it has been reported that the cash stolen had been returned to the police. Jimmy had anonymously given the police the location of the cash truck. FBI agent Sarah begins her investigation on the now popular heist. She investigates the sites of the crime and is told that Max is an eyewitness and can identify the robbers. Although Sarah suspects Jimmy, Joe, and Clyde to be part of the heist crew, she has no concrete evidence to back up her claims. Clyde is released from prison after serving his sentence. He goes back home to receive a mail from Jimmy and a briefcase containing a new prosthetic arm. The FBI visits the prison warden to question him on Joe and Clyde's prison movements. But the warden refuses to say anything that would implicate his position as warden. So he claims his prison cell is very much secured and a break-in can never happen. A few months later, Joe Bang is released from prison as he had done his time. He goes over to visit Clyde at his bar. He asks for the whereabouts of Jimmy and why he would return the money to the police. Clyde has no clear answer, but then tells him that Jimmy has relocated to Lynchburg. 6 months after the heist, the manager of the Speedway then tells the FBI to put the case behind, as there haven't been any positives concerning the heist. Instead, the heist grew more popular, and the robbers are being regarded as heroes. He is satisfied with the money recovered and the insurance settlement. After Joe returns home, he finds a shovel in his front yard, and then figures that Jimmy could have buried his share under his oak tree. So he goes on to dig, and then finds a garbage bag of money buried in his yard. Sylvia receives an anonymous donation for her clinic, and Naaman, the inmate who orchestrated the prison riot, and the woman working at the vault each receive an envelope stuffed with cash. We get to find out that Jimmy had orchestrated his own plans without involving Joe and his brothers. He made sure the crime site was left with no traces. He had filled extra trash bags with cash during the heist and then hid them at a dump site so he could retrieve it later. He had bought a house near his daughter and ex-wife's home with the money from the heist. When everything has died down, he visits his brother and Joe at the bar, where they all reunite applauding his brilliant plan. Jimmy begins his love story with Sylvia, as Grayson spies on the group by associating with Clyde. The end.